Welcome everyone. We are going to paint up our Carrot Company sign today. Here is the finished product that we're going to be working on. We're going to start with the background. The background is done with the darker brown. Again, using my favorite baby wipe method. I started this here just to show you, and I'm going to continue on just with my brown paint. I'm going up and down. When I get up here to my engraving, I'm just kind of quickly brushing it across. My baby wipe is pretty dry. I don't want to get paint down in there. I want to avoid that. We can try and scrape it out if we have to. With it being brown, it's not going to hurt as much, but we want to avoid that if all possible. You do not need a ton of paint to do this faux staining type of project. Just gonna get all of the edges here real quick. I will come back and sand this in a few minutes after it is completely dry. I already did the frame, doing the exact same thing with the cocoa. When you're doing skinny pieces like this, you sometimes do get it on the inside edge, so you might need to just give it a wipe to clean off any of that extra that you might have. So I did the frame in cocoa. I'm also going to do this piece with some cocoa. I'm just gonna find a clean spot on my wipe here, grab a little bit of paint, like not very much paint, and I'm gonna wipe it across here just carefully. I don't wanna glob it down into my engraving. And you can see just by doing that tiny little bit of paint, it already gives it enough color to make it look much different. Very little paint. I'm just going across the surface. We don't want to force any paint down in there. Get a little new clean spot. Just pushing it across the surface. You could use a sponge. Again, make sure you brush off any extra because you don't want it stuck down in your engraving. Okay, got that. I already did the majority of my letters. I'm going to just show you this last one. My foam brush, I'm using the side of it. I like to hold on to it and push it down with my finger. So I'm going in an up and down motion. I preach that all the time. Thin layers in an up and down motion. Turn it around and just do the other side. You can always make a paint bubble and stick these onto the table, but I find I usually still need to hold them with my fingernails so they don't bounce up and down. But that will give you your clean edges. So if I pretend that this is on the table, I'm just doing an up and down motion with thin layers of paint. Okay, so I did all my letters like that. I also am going to put white on my banner. I already did the one side. It's not completely solid, but I think that look works perfect with this vintage type of sign. I'll do the other side here. Again, I'm getting a little bit of paint, wiping off any extra, and I'm going to just go in an up and down motion gently. This is not, I'm not pushing it because I don't want to force it down over the edge or force it into that engraving. I'm just going to put a layer of white on the whole thing. Could you brush back and forth? You can, but you just want to be super careful that you don't get it down there in that engraving. I don't recommend it. I recommend just continuing with some gentle up and down layers until you get the coverage that you like. I'm not worrying about this being full coverage. And I'm not doing these two parts, they're gonna get covered. If you do get some that you are unhappy with, you can try a sharp object, a pin. I have one of my vinyl pickers here. This is a pretty thin engraving, so you may have trouble getting that out, but you could give that a try if you have an accident. All right, so we'll let that dry. And our carrots. Again, I'm just using a baby wipe. You could use a sponge. You could grab your paint and sponge it on just like so and do it that way in very thin layers so that you don't lose your engraving. Again, you could also do it with a baby wipe and your faux sort of stain. I'm gonna swap clean side, grab some orange and do my carrots. Just kind of dabbing it on there, and it's very, very light amount of paint so I can rub it without it going down into that engraving. So it's got that faux stain look. I'm gonna grab a little just where my two colors meet here and clean that up a little bit. Okay. Sometimes I grab more than one color on my sponge and give myself a little bit of some character. I could take a little white on my sponge as well and kind of do that a little bit. And just play around with it until I get it to be the way that I want. All right, so there's my carrots. They will get glued right onto this blank section. So I'm just gonna sit them. I'm looking straight down at them so that I can eyeball it and get them matched up. My paint's still wet, but I can push it down there and get it stuck. Okay, so there's my banner. I have my letters already done. So now we can assemble. Here is our backer board. I am going to give that a little sanding. When you're sanding, it will lighten up a little bit. So keep that in mind. If you don't want to see that light, then you may not want to sand, or you might want to wipe with a damp cloth that dust off when you're done. I think the rustic nature of this sign, it's perfectly fine that it has some different shading to it. But again, like I said, you could take a baby wipe. I just have mine here that I was using, and kind of dust off that sanding dust that you created, okay? It's a little bit less pronounced in real life, but on the video it looks quite different. I'm gonna put my frame here, and I'm going to put it upside down. I'm going to add my super glue just in dots, and I'm putting it sort of on the inside towards the middle of my frame. And then I'm going to lay this down, looking at it from above so that I get it so that it has just a hair hanging over on the bottom the whole way around. And then we'll push that down. I'll hold that for a second, and while I'm doing that, I'll show you the hanging mechanism. We give you these little hangers. You simply glue that on the top. You can make it tied at any length you want. You can shorten it up enough that you don't even see the twine, and just put your nail right there so you can make that wherever you need it to be. All right, so we are glued, and I am going to lay my pieces on in the spot that they go. Our bar is going to go across there. Then we can just play around and adjust and get it to where it needs to be. So we've got our carrot company. I am not going to glue this one during the video because this one really needs me to pay attention and make sure that I have all of my, whoops, what am I doing there? All of my pieces straight as I'm gluing them, and I want to do that correctly so so that I have them lined up. And it's a little hard to do because I'm sort of sideways to the video, so but you get the idea. So I will pick each individual piece up and I will glue it where it needs to go. But I did want to show you one other detail that's fun with this one. If I look at my finished piece, I do have some shading. Let me bring that into the camera. I just used my foam brush, and I'll show you here in just a second, to add some extra little white on some of my pieces, as well as I did some flecking. I'll show you that also. And then I have one other little detail, kind of some cool little divots in our wood, sort of makes it look like it has some old, you know, wormholes, knot holes, just some additional extra. And I'll show you how to do that. So with my white brush, and I have barely any paint on there, it's almost dry, I can take that and just kind of wipe it across. I'm almost vertical to my pieces. Wipe that, and that gives you some nice detail. I can do that at the edges. It's almost like I'm just scraping off my extra, go both directions. So I can do that. Can do it on this piece as well. Add a little extra. Oh, that might be more extra than I want, which is nice because I can just wipe it, okay? I can also use an artist brush, or if you have an old toothbrush laying around, get it a little wet, grab a little bit of paint. Let me find some white paint that I've left here. And you can fleck with your finger to kind of give you, I might not have enough moisture here on my brush, but you can just flick it and get, there we go, get some little speckles going. I could do that with black or the dark brown also, okay? And then one last touch that we gave to this one was we used a Phillips screwdriver. Phillips screwdrivers have that X shape on the end of them. And we just placed it randomly on there. This might be loud. I'm gonna hit it with the hammer. And lifted it up. And it gave us that kind of little X-y shape. Let me do another one here. Kind of just some additional little detail. You don't have to do that. I think it added some character to the piece. And I will go ahead and get this one glued up, and it will look very similar to this guy right here. So thanks for joining us for our Carrot Company sign today.